Hare Krishna. So today is 6th of September. On behalf of ISKCON Scarborough, I would like to welcome each one of you to our 25th successive week of virtual Sunday feast classes. If you remember, we started it in March, actually 22nd of March, which is over 5 months ago. So this is not what we thought. But the great thing is we have wonderful devotees giving classes. And today, is no different. We're honored to welcome back His Grace Dravida Prabhu to speak on the topic of the 6 limbs of surrender. And this will be part 1 of the multimedia presentation. And the concluding part of this six limbs of surrender will be next Sunday as well. And for those of you who've been with us for all the virtual classes, Prabhu has given several classes. In fact, virtual classes for ISKCON Scarborough started off with taking shelter of Krishna in times of danger. That was the first class. And then Prabhu gave us fascinating 2-part series class on Dasamula, the 10 roots of Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy. And then Prabhu wonderfully explained the 3rd canto, especially dealing with Lord Kapiladev's Sadhu Shangashtaka, the 8 verses from the teachings to his mother. And then the last class that Prabhu gave us was Sri Krishna Katastaka from the 12th canto, 12th chapter as well. So today is Prabhu's 6th virtual class for ISKCON Scarborough, and coincidentally, the title of the class is also the 6 limbs of surrender, and today is also 6th day of September. Wow. So, and for the benefit of devotees, all the classes are recorded and posted in YouTube. You can search by ISKCON Scarborough, as well as look through the older posts of ISKCON Scarborough's website, as well as all the recording is posted by Mahesh Ram Prabhu through SoundCloud as well, and the link is available in ISKCON Scarborough's website as well. So a little bit about His Grace Dravida Prabhu. He's a disciple of Srila Prabhupada. Dravida Prabhu joined ISKCON in 1973 and has served as an editor and proofreader for BBT, which is Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, for over 45 years. From 1983 to 1989, he was part of the team that completed Srila Prabhupada's magnum opus, the commentated English translation of India's jewel of Vedic wisdom, the 18,000 verse Srimad Bhagavatam. And he was also, and he also is part of the team that produces Srila Prabhupada's Vyasa Puja book every year. And in addition to his editing work, he teaches Bhakti Yoga classes at ISKCON San Diego Temple. I've been there a few times, and he also visits Toronto and many other parts of the world as well. Throughout all this immersion in transcendental literature, Dravid Prabhu developed this love of Sanskrit language, and especially the elaborate verses of Bhagavatam and other Bhakti literature. And he's been a brahmachari throughout his devotional career. And with that, I invite His Grace Dravid Prabhu to enlighten us on the topic of the 6 limbs of surrender, which is part 1 today. And the last 10 to 15 minutes, we will open up for questions, which you'll be sending through the chat forum, either private or public. You can send it along. Thank you very much. And over to you, Dravid Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Ananda Garanga Prabhu. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshurun Midatam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and to all members of Sri Parampara. Hare Krishna, everybody. So today we're going to be studying the 6 limbs of surrender, as expressed in, oh boy, okay. So, sorry about that. I need to be able to see this. And just give me a second. Okay. So there's a verse you may see on your screen, quoted from in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 2200, from the Vayu Purana, describing these 6 divisions or limbs of Sharanagati. So I'll chant that, and if you want, you can chant along. I know you're muted. Anukulyasya sankalpa pratikulyasya varjanam rakshishyati vishvaso gopridve vadanam tata atmanikshepa karpanye Shadbidha Shadanagatihi. The 6 divisions of surrender are the acceptance of those things favorable to devotional service, the rejection of unfavorable things, the conviction that Krishna will give protection, the acceptance of the Lord as one's guardian or master, and full self-surrender and humility. So we're going to study each one of these first 3 today. But before we go on, just a word about this idea and this concept of surrender. I think we all know, we can understand how central this is to the process of devotional service. Krishna consciousness, as given in so beautifully by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, he concluding instructions, Sarva Dharman Parityaja Mamekam Sharanam Vraja Aham Tvam Savapapi Mokshayasami Mashitaha. He is describing there that don't worry about everything else I just said. You know, Sarva Dharman Parityaja Mamekam Sharanam Vraja. Simply take shelter of me exclusively, and I will eliminate all of your sinful reactions. Do not fear. And of course, he's described in the previous verse that you'll come to me by always thinking about me, becoming my devotee, and bowing down to me, worshiping me like that. So this is a central concept for those who are serious about practicing devotional service and advancing on the path. So with that little introduction, let's proceed. First, we'll talk about anukulyasya sankalpa, accepting what is favorable for devotional service. Now, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he has a song anthology called Sharanagati, in which he has a song about each one of these limbs. And so we're going to read just a translation of his song about the first limb, which is accepting everything that is favorable for devotional service. So the translation is, and I'll read this quickly. My dear Lord Krishna, I will surely execute with utmost care those activities favorable to your pure devotional service. I will feel fondness for those things in this world which are conducive to pure devotion, and with my senses I will engage them in your service. I will carefully listen to all discussions concerning you, and the satisfaction of my eyes will be to behold your divine abode. I will nourish my body with the sacred remnants of your food, and I will smell the sweet scent of tulsi leaves adorning those offerings. With my hands I will always execute your service, and I will forever dwell at that place where you abide. I will employ my desires in your devotional service, and I will show my anger to those who are envious of you. In this way, may all of my propensities and emotions earn spiritual potency by being favorably dovetailed in your interest. Anything I do which gives pleasure to your devotee, I will embrace as conducive to your devotional service. Bhaktivinoda knows neither religion nor irreligion. He simply prays that all his activities be favorable for pure devotion unto you. So now in the next screen, we'll see this idea of sankalpa. Somehow, now I can't, yeah. A sankalpa is, because anukulya says sankalpa, a definite intention or determination or decision. Every devotee has accepted many things favorable for the Lord's service and rejected many unfavorable things. But to accept whatever is favorable and reject whatever is unfavorable is the platform of pure devotion. It takes great determination to move steadily along that path toward full surrender. Therefore, in his Upadeshamrita, Srila Rupa Goswami has given us his essential instructions on what is favorable for devotional service. So one note about this word sankalpa. Sankalpa is something that is there both in the material and the spiritual sphere. If we are going to, for instance, get an education, and we understand that it's going to be tapasya, it's going to be a sacrifice, but we know at the end of the education, I'll have a better chance for employment and prosperity and a good life. So we make a intention or determination or decision. And that willpower is there, and it's sustained by our understanding of the goal and our applying our mind, body, and words to the process or the discipline. So the same thing is there in spiritual life. We have to, by our knowledge, by hearing from the Shastra, reading and associating with devotees, we get a determination to follow the path to reach the goal, which is going back to Godhead and immersion in unlimited and unending happiness of service to Krishna. So this process of Sharanagati and the whole process given by Rupa Goswami in his Nectar of Devotion and Nectar of Instruction are helping us to attain that sankalpa, that willpower, and giving us instructions on how to go on the goal. So now this is from the Upadeshamrita. This is text number 3. The 6 principles favorable to the execution of pure devotional service are: 1, being enthusiastic; 2, endeavoring with confidence; 3, being patient; 4, performing the standard practices of bhakti, such as hearing and chanting about Krishna; 5, abandoning the association of non-devotees; and 6, following in the footsteps of the previous acharyas. So no matter what stage we're at in our devotional life, no matter what ashram we're in, if we're serious about progressing in devotional service, we need to embrace these 6 processes as foundations for accepting other things and everything that is ultimately everything that is favorable devotional service. That's the idea. So, no, I don't want to do that. So this is now blocking. Ananda, are you there? I don't know if you can see my screen, but how do I see this? Do you want to see my?
Yeah, we are able to see the screen as well as hear you. No problem at all. No change.
Yeah, but it's a change because 2 people have entered the waiting room for this meeting. I'm getting that notice, but it's blocking what I can't read the top of the screen.
I'm sorry about that. Okay.
Can we do something about that?
Yeah. Is that okay now?
Yes, yes.
Sorry about that. Okay.
One must be enthusiastic, determined, and patient in the matter of performing the regular practice of bhakti. What are they? So this is Utsahan, Nishayat, Daryat, those first 3. And these are very familiar to us. But this is the context in which we practice enthusiasm, patience, and determination. That's the second line, Tat Tat Karma Pravartana. Hearing about Krishna, chanting about Krishna, remembering Krishna, serving Krishna's lotus feet, worshiping Krishna, bowing down to and praying to Krishna, becoming Krishna's servant, becoming Krishna's friend, surrendering everything to Krishna. Now, how do we know how to do all these things? That's described in the next section. At the same time, we need to reject the association of materialists of all stripes and follow in the footsteps of pure devotees. Those are the other elements of the 3rd verse of the Upadeshamrita. But to be able to do any of this sincerely over time, we need to accept the first 3 essential steps given by Rupa Goswami in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So you see how all of this fits together. 1, accepting the shelter of the lotus feet of a bona fide spiritual master. 2, becoming initiated by the spiritual master and learning how to discharge devotional service from him. And 3, obeying the orders of the spiritual master with faith and devotion. So you see what's going on here. We have within us, when we become aware of the process of devotional service and the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, we have 2 competing impulses and desires, sets of desires that are competing for our activity and our attention. One is our whole material aspect that we've carried over from millions of births. And so this is this strong conditioning that we're trying to overcome and direct our attention and our affection and our activities toward Krishna. So it's essential to have a guide who we accept as a source of knowledge and a source of instruction. This was Arjun's example in the Bhagavad Gita. The whole first chapter, when he finally, wanted to see who's on the other side, and he had Krishna take him there. And then he saw, and he lost his sankalpa. He lost his determination to fight because he had this competing element, which is his material side, material affection, So when in chapter 2, he was still of that sentiment until he surrendered to Krishna in text 7. He accepted him not as a friend, but as his guru and instructor. And that means that he's going to accept his instructions for activity ultimately. And so that changes everything. And that's why this acceptance of the guide of the spiritual master is so important. And it's right at the beginning of Rupa Goswami's outlining of the process of devotional service in the Nectar of Devotion. So now I collected a few verses, only a few, here that help us to fix our mind on this first process of surrendering, which is accepting what is favorable for devotional service. So I'll chant, and if you can chant along. Bhavanta meva nuchadan nirantara prashanta nikshe samanodhatantara kadahamai kandika nitya kinkara paharshi yasyami sanata jivitam. This is quoted in the CC, and probably some recite this fairly often. You like this verse. By serving you constantly, one is freed from all material desires and is completely pacified. When shall I engage as your permanent eternal servant and always feel joyful to have such a fitting master? Yamunacharya, Dr. Ratna 43. This is from the Rupa Goswami's Namashtika, number 1. Nikila Shruti Maure Rattamala Tutinira Jatapada Pankajanta Ayamukta Kolairu Pasyamanam Paditastvam Harinama Samshayami. O Harinam, the tips of the toes of your lotus feet are constantly being worshipped by the glowing radiance emanating from the string of gems known as the Upanishads, the crown jewels of all the Vedas. You are eternally adored by liberated souls such as Narada and Shukadev. O Harinam, I take complete shelter of you. So this is Sharanagati. Our first shelter we need to take care of is the holy name, Krishna in his holy name. Most accessible and so merciful. Anyone, anytime, any place can chant the holy name. So that's our first element of surrender, to seriously take up the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And here's a prayer for getting a taste for your names. Agadamana Yashoda, also from the Namashtika. Agadamana Yashoda, Nandana Nandasuno, Kamananayana Gopi, Chandra Vindavanendra, Pamata Kapana Krishna, Vityaneka Swarupe, Chai Mamanata Duchai, Bhartatam Namadeya. Oh, holy name, I'm sorry, that's a misprinted, that I should. Oh, holy name, kindly greatly increase my love for you in your many forms, such as Agadamana, the crusher of Agasra, Yashoda Nandana, son of Yashoda, Nandasunu, the son of Nanda, Kamala Nayana, the lotus-eyed Lord, Gopi Chandra, the moon of the gopis, Vrindavanendra, the king of Vrindavan, and Panata Karuna, the surrendered soul's most merciful Lord, and Krishna. Okay. So that's the little meditation on the first element of Sharanagati. Now the second one, Patikulyasya Varjanam, rejecting what is unfavorable for devotional service. And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has a song about this second element of Sharanagati. My dear Lord Krishna, I will assuredly abandon with utmost endeavor all things in which aversion to your devotional service is inherent. I will not keep company with those opposed to your devotional service, nor even look at the faces of those inimical toward Lord Gauranga. I will never reside at a place unfavorable for devotional practices, and I will never take pleasure in non-devotional activities. I will read no book opposed to pure devotion, nor listen to any scriptural explanation which counters pure devotional principles. I will never regard as sacred any place where Lord Gauranga is rejected. All knowledge or action hindering pure devotional service I consider worthless. Any seasonal observance posing obstacles to the execution of devotional service finds no favor with me, and I consider as strangers all my own relatives or family members who are averse to devotional service. I will totally abandon all desires that hinder devotion, and I will never touch foodstuffs offered to me by non-devotees. I vow to carefully avoid whatever I know to be contrary to devotional service. This is a most definite proclamation. Bhaktivinoda falls down at the feet of the Lord and begs for the strength to give up all things that are unfavorable to pure devotion. So this element of Sharanagati can be seen as on a par with, or sometimes even more difficult than accepting those things favorable, because we've all accepted some things favorable, the chanting of Hare Krishna, we like to go to the temple, we like to hear the classes, and kirtan, and certainly take prasadam. But accepting everything favorable is another platform. But giving up those things that we're accustomed to that are blockages to devotional service, this takes a lot of determination. And so Bhaktivinoda Thakur, obviously some of these things are aspirations that we will have. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is on that platform. But it helps to read these, or sing the song, or at least understand, read the English, and to get the idea and to aspire for this platform. Because giving up is on any discipline, anything you want to achieve. You want to become a violin player, then you have to accept the teacher, you have to follow his instructions, how to finger it and everything, and how to hold the instrument. And you have to give up those things which will detrimental to the process. There's no way around it. Anything you want to achieve has these two elements. So in devotional service, it's a radical reformation of our whole personality and our consciousness. So naturally, there are hurdles that we have to overcome, and difficulties that we have to undertake. So he's giving the standard here, and it's good to review this to see the standard of pure devotion. So now this is just a meditation on this famous story of the boat with the anchor. Each of us has been suffering in the ocean of material misery since time immemorial, but the human body is like a well-constructed boat that can take us to the far shore of the ocean, to the spiritual world, the land of eternal bliss beyond all suffering. The bona fide guru is the able captain of the ship, and the practices of bhakti Lord Krishna teaches through the Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and other sacred books are like strong boatmen that can swiftly impel the boat to its destination. But if we fail to reject those things that are unfavorable to devotional service, they will act like an anchor that slows or even stops our progress. So this is a wonderful analogy that Prabhupada has given us. It's based on the Bhagavatam, Nidehamadhyam Sulabham Sadulabham. There's a verse about the human body as the great boat to take us across the ocean of birth and death. So it's important to, of course, hear and read and study the Shastra regularly, but we'll find so many reminders and descriptions of the urgency of taking this process of devotional service, and that means taking the process of surrender seriously. And that how much time do we really have? This pandemic has, in one sense, has really sharpened many devotees' sankalpa, their determination to advance as quickly as possible in devotional service, because we don't know how long we have. So we can study this. We'll make this PowerPoint, maybe turn it into a PDF, so everyone can study this on their own. So this is a good lesson. What are those impediments? What are those anchors? Three categories of impediments to bhakti. One, the four pillars of sin. Obviously, meat eating, intoxication, gambling, and illicit sex are big impediments, especially when first beginning. Two, Rupa Goswami's warning from the Upadeshamrita. So this is the second verse of the Upadeshamrita. The following destroy one's devotion: overeating or over-collecting. 2, over-endeavoring for mundane things. 3, mundane talking. 4, mechanically following the scriptural rules and regulations or rejecting them entirely. 5, associating with non-devotees. And 6, being greedy for mundane achievements. So this is the content of these pratikulyasya varjanam, having to give up those things which are obstructions to devotional service. And so I meditate, can read, okay. On the offenses, so I give here the 10 offenses of the holy name, and at the bottom you'll see there are many more. We can study the nectar devotion. To blaspheme devotees, the 10 offenses to the name. 2, to consider the names of Shiva, Brahma, or other demigods equal to or independent of Lord Vishnu's names. 3, to disrespect the spiritual master by disobeying his orders. 4, to blaspheme Vedic literature. 5, to consider, or any literature following the Vedic version. 5, to consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna imaginary. 6, to give some mundane interpretation of the holy name. 7, to commit sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy name. Prabhupada sometimes says this is the greatest offense. 8, to consider the chanting of Hare Krishna a materially motivated ritual. 9, to glorify the holy name to the faithless. 10, to not have complete faith in the chanting of the holy names and to maintain material attachments even after understanding so many instructions on this matter. I can abridge these a little bit. And 10a, to be inattentive while chanting the holy name. I think it was Bhaktivinoda Thakur who says that all of the offenses flow from inattention. Because if we're attentive to the holy name, then we'll get the mercy of the holy name and it'll give us the strength to avoid all the other offenses. But without that attention, then our will be weakened. And, okay, so now I collected a few verses. Many of you may know some of these. For rejecting what is unfavorable for devotional service. Nadanang najanang nasundarim kapitam va jagadish kamahi. Mama janmani janmani shware bapata bhaktidahai tuki tvahi. My little poem. Wealth and women, followers, the fruits of mundane piety, liberation from this world of limitless anxiety. For me, O Lord, such common goals have not the slightest worth. Let me serve you purely now and in each future birth. So first, Lord Chaitanya, he outlines those things that he's not practicing devotional service to attain these things, even liberation when he says birth after birth. So that's implied. What is his motivation? Pure devotional service, ahoitaki bhakti, without the slightest tinge of material motivation. And constant. This may not be familiar to this verse really struck me when I read it, and I often quote it. Yanna vajanta kabado vachanano vadat chinvandihe nivishaya kukatamati gnihi yastu shuta hatabagaya nibarata saras tang chapan chashadane shutamakso hanta. Unfortunate souls who listen to bad words that never glorify Krishna's pastimes cannot enter the spiritual world. Alas, such words destroy their intelligence, piety, and good fortune, and cast them into hell with no shelter. The word atasaras is especially important here. It means to steal away your interest in the ultimate goal of life. This hearing kukata. So this is, of course, a result of association with non-devotees. So that's very important to avoid. And here's another one of my favorites. I put it into a poem, quoted by Lord Chaitanya in his instruction to Sanatana Goswami in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Kamadinam katina katitha padita dhunideshas teshang jata maina karuna nattapano pishantihi putri jaita nadiyotapate sampratam labna buddhis pamayata shadanamabhayam nam niyum swatmadase. There's the word shadanam, so in Sharanagati here. In how many ways have I sought to obey the seductive demands of my wicked desires? They've shown me no mercy, yet on I've gone shamelessly trying to quench lust's unquenchable fires. But now I'm rejecting those hellish desires, for my higher intelligence now has awoken. O Krishna, O shelter of fearlessness, please let me serve you with faith that will never be broken. So this is a wonderful verse, originally written by Madhavendra Puri. And he's describing first the material condition where we're really enslaved by the modes of passion and ignorance and the things that go with it, uncontrollable lust and anger and greed and these things. And they're just like cruel taskmasters who don't show us any mercy or never satisfied. And we need to get free of them. We can only get free when we come in touch with pure devotee and the instructions of the Shastra. Then we can, as he says, the intelligence is awakened. How is it awakened? By hearing from pure devotees. And so now he's got the strength to give up rejecting these hellish desires, but he's running to Krishna. Now you please engage me in your service, because we're by nature servants. So if we're not going to serve these lust, anger, and greed, etc., we need to serve Krishna. So it's a beautiful prayer. Okay, so now one of the elements that we have to give up, particularly Yasavarjanam, is Asat Sangha. This is a theme here. Asat Sangha Tyaga e Vaishnavachar. This is Lord Chaitanya's answer to how do I recognize a Vaishnav? This was a question of one of his, when he was in Puri, the devotees would come once a year and join him for the Rath Yatra, and there would be a lot of wonderful interaction. So they wanted to know, how do I recognize a Vaishnava? Because he said you should associate with a Vaishnava. Asatsanga Tyaga e Vaishnava Achar. A Vaishnava should always avoid the association of non-devotees. And this is one of the main symptoms that you see, that great Vaishnavas are always hankering for devotee association and rejecting non-devotee association. So here are a couple of verses that describe the perils of bad association, material association. Vadam huta bahadvala panjaranta vivastitihi nashawi chinta vimaka janasambhasa vaishasam. Better to be trapped in a cage surrounded by burning flames than to suffer the calamity of associating with those bereft of Krishna consciousness. Katyayana Samhita, that's quoted in C.C. Madhya 2291. So this is all under the category of those things, particularly a subvarjanam, giving up those things inimical to devotional service. And there's one or two others here. Satyam Shaucham Daya Maunam Buddhi Ri Shri Yashak Shama Shamo Damo Bhagascheti Yatsangad Yati Sankshayam. Association with worldly people robs one of all truthfulness, cleanliness, mercy, gravity, spiritual intelligence, shyness, austerity, fame, forgiveness, control of the mind, control of the senses, and good fortune. From Bhagavatam, the teachings of Lord Kapila Dev. So, if that didn't convince you, I don't know what will. Okay, we're on the third element of Sharanagati. Rakshishyati Vishvasa. The conviction that Krishna will give all protection. Like Vinod sings in his song anthology, Sharanagati. 1. Now I have understood, O Lord, that your feet are eternally full of sweet nectar that dispels all sorrow and fear. Surrendering myself and all I possess unto those lotus feet, I have laid myself down submissively under their shelter. Your lotus feet, O Lord, will certainly shelter me. There are no other protectors in this world of birth and death. At last I know myself to be your eternal servant. Now the burden of my protection is exclusively yours. In my life of independence from you, I have experienced nothing but misery. But now, upon accepting those lotus feet of yours, all my miseries have been cast far away. I desire a place at your lotus feet, the goddess of fortune. Desiring a place at your lotus feet, the goddess of fortune performed difficult austerities. Only after receiving your lotus feet did Lord Shiva become auspicious. Upon obtaining your lotus feet, Lord Brahma had his desires fulfilled. Your lotus feet are always held by the great sage Narada Muni within his heart. I now hold on my head those very same lotus feet which drive away all fear while I dance in great ecstasy, singing your glories. Your lotus feet will surely deliver Bhaktivinoda from the dangerous perils of this worldly journey. So this is a meditation on Krishna's lotus feet. Remember this, one of the boats, there's many boats described in the Bhagavatam, and the lotus feet are one of them, the lotus feet of Krishna. Samashadahi palaballava plavam mahatpadam punyasho marare bhavam buddhi vatsapadam padam 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 vira padam yadvidam natesham. Those who take full shelter of Krishna's lotus feet, or lotus feet of Murari, the enemy of Mura, which lotus feet are the place where all the Mahatmas rest, or the foundation of the entire universe. And this Krishna, whose very glories bring piety, simply glorifying him. Then for them, this dangerous ocean of birth and death shrinks down to the water in a calf's hoof print. Not for them is this place where there's danger at every step, because they're in the spiritual world. All right, ahead of time. So the basic principle of surrender is to give up the false ego centered on one's own body and its expansions, and identify oneself as an eternal servant of Krishna. As Srila Prabhupada writes in his purport to C.C. Madhya 22-100, a devotee must be firmly convinced that Krishna will give him protection. No one else can actually give one protection, and being firmly convinced of this is called faith. This kind of faith is different from the faith of an impersonalist who wants to merge into the Brahman effulgence in order to benefit by cessation of repeated birth and death. A devotee wants to remain always in the Lord's service. In this way, Krishna is merciful to his devotee and gives him all protection from the dangers found on the path of devotional service. Now we can see from Prabhupada's own life how he was fully absorbed in this element of surrender. To get on that boat, come to America in September 1965, was a supreme act of faith in Krishna's protection. And we know what he went through on the ship. There were several heart attacks, but then Krishna appeared to him in a dream. Don't worry, I'm going to take charge of this boat. He's rowing the boat. And even the captain would say, we've never had such a smooth crossing of the Atlantic. Atlantic usually full of storms. That's why the Pacific Ocean, which was named the Pacific because it's much more peaceful. So, and then, when he came to America, there was so many dangers, and yet he was fearless in these dangers. He was confident in Krishna's protection. So one may ask, well, okay, but the devotees also die, they get in accidents. What's that all about? Well, ultimately, of course, the body must go at a certain point. But the real key is, what is our consciousness at that point? If one is completely feeling Krishna's protection, then even if, it's time and the body goes, you're still able to remember Krishna. You're not completely disturbed by the terror of losing the body, because you're not identifying with the body. You're identifying wholly and solely as a servant of Krishna. And so cultivating this fearlessness, which is a result of being confident in Krishna's protection, is an essential element, because ultimately we all are going to face this great danger of death, and we need to be prepared for it ahead of time. So you can see how important this element of surrender is. Okay, so going on. So this is our famous song, and this is a perfect song for this fearlessness. Now, Prabhupada's name, of course, was Abhay before he even was initiated. And his official name is Abhay Charanaravinda Das. And so, before he took sannyas. So that's the AC in AC Bhaktivedanta. So Prabhupada loved this song. He taught it to us when he came. Bahore, Bajohure, Manashi Nandanandana. So I'll sing this. This is quickly. It's to the same tune that we know. But, oh wretched foolish mind, just give up all deceit and worship Krishna's fearless lotus feet. Don't waste this human life, stay close to devotees and cross this worldly sea of miseries. My sleepless nights and days I've simply spent in vain, beset by heat and cold and wind and rain, while blindly serving cunning people steeped in sin, in search of fleeting pleasures of the skin. Oh wretched foolish mind, just give up all deceit and worship Krishna's fearless lotus feet. Don't waste this human life, stay close to devotees and cross this worldly sea of miseries. What joy is there in wealth and youth or sons and kin, when I can see my life is tottering? Just like a drop of water on a lotus leaf, oh mind, just serve the feet of Shri Hari. Oh wretched foolish mind, just give up all deceit and worship Krishna's fearless lotus feet. Don't waste this human life, stay close to devotees and cross this worldly sea of miseries. I long to hear and chant about my Lord Hari, remember him and serve him constantly, and pray to him and worship him and serve his feet, become his friend and give myself complete. Oh wretched foolish mind, just give up all deceit and worship Krishna's fearless lotus feet. Don't waste this human life, stay close to devotees and cross this worldly sea of misery. But sometimes pure devotees pray for danger because it increases the intensity of the meditation on Krishna and thus his presence, as Queen Kunti prays. Vibadak santatak shashvat tattatacha jagadguru bhavato darshanam yaksyad apanam bhavadarshanam. Now she's just, in her prayer, she just finished recounting some of the dangers that she went through with her sons, and always remembering Krishna and how Krishna protected them in every instance, especially the battle itself, Battle of Kurukshetra, and the time in the forest and all these dangers. So she says, I wish that all those calamities would happen again and again, so that we could see you again and again. For seeing you means that we will no longer see repeated births and deaths. And these are some more verses expressing the deep faith that Krishna alone will give one all protection. This one I chanted already. Samashtritahe padapallavam mahatpadam punnayesho marare Pavambudya vatsapadam padam parampadam padam padam yantipadam natesha. For those who have accepted the abode of the lotus feet of the Lord, who is the shelter of the cosmic manifestation, and is famous as Murari, the enemy of the Mura demon, the ocean of the material world is like the water contained in a calf's hoofprint. Their goal is Parampadam, Vaikuntha, the place where there are no material miseries, not the place where there is danger at every step. The Srimad Bhagavatam 10:14-58. And this is one that's spoken by Dhruva after he got darshan of Vishnu when he's praying. The most famous prayer, the one Prabhupada would give us ending in Svaman Kratartosmi Vidamyashi, is not in the Bhagavatam, but it's there in the Hari Bhakti Sudodaya. But this one is the favorite of mine that's in the Bhagavatam of Dhruva's prayers. Bhakti moho prabhatam tvahime prasango bhuyadananda mahatam amalashayana yenanda solbanamaruva sanamba vabdi neshe bhavad gunakatam matapana mattaha. O Lord, kindly bless me with the association of your great pure-hearted devotees who constantly render you transcendental loving service, just as a wave-filled river constantly flows. By serving you as they do, I shall surely be able to cross the nescient ocean of material existence, which is filled with the waves of blazing fire-like dangers. It will be very easy for me, for I am becoming mad to hear about your eternal transcendental qualities and pastimes. Okay. Vivrita vivida badi, blanti vegada gadi, balavati bhavapuri, manjato me viduri, ashadana ganabando, he kripakam hudindo, asakudakutta vilambam, Dehastavalambam. This is Rupa Swami Stavamala. I am drowning in the painful, fathomless whirlpool of repeated birth and death. O Lord, O friend of the shelterless, O effulgent moon of mercy, please, just once, quickly extend your hand to save me. And this one I put into a little poem, again in Rupa Goswami Stavamala. Madhachadapanidrushti, Alabnapatos Vidushti, Timanagahana Rupe, Handa Sansara Kupe, Ajadanakala Rakshahi, Tamundara Daksham, Upanayamamahaste, Bhakti Ranjun Namaste. Fallen in the deep and dark and dirty well of Maya, threatened by the snake of lust, whose venom burns like fire, helplessly I plead, O Lord, whose strength is near in doubt, place the rope of bhakti in my hands and pull me out. Now, whenever I quote this in a class, I always like to point out that he's recognizing his position. He's praying to Krishna from the bottom of his heart that he'll place that rope of bhakti in his hands. So what do we have to do? We have to hold on to that rope, means we have to surrender. Accept everything favorable, reject everything unfavorable, and so forth. So it's very, very wonderful verses. So that's the end of our part one of this Sharanagati. And just in time, it's now 8:45. So we can entertain any questions or discussion at this time.
Perfect, Prabhu. Thank you very much. Perfect timing, 8:45, which is Pacific time for the benefit of devotees who are from different countries as well. So we appreciate and thank the devotees who have joined us from Mauritius as well.
Wow.
Yeah, and also from several parts of GTA, Greater Toronto area and beyond. So Prabhu, we're really, really thankful to you for picking these, jewel of verses from the ocean of scriptures. Literally, like many of us or all of us would have not known, all the verses that you have picked from these wonderful scriptures, and then inserted them in the right places so that we understand the topic that you have chosen. Really, it's from the bottom of our heart. On behalf of all the devotees, I would like to thank you for that. And also the power of these verses that you have picked, Prabhu. So that by itself is serving as the purport to these topics as well. The power of verses, those verses that you have picked and inserted, that gives this sort of purport to the 6 limbs of surrender that you have chosen. So that is fascinating, Prabhu.
Yeah, one thing, just one comment, one thing about the verses is that, remember, the whole thing is sankalpa, is getting the determination to follow these 6 principles of surrender. And there's no question, just as chanting the holy name, it gives us determination and the ability to follow basic principles of bhakti. So these verses, especially because they feed the intelligence, there's so many wonderful ideas and beautiful expressions there. They help us to get the determination to embrace these 6 principles of surrender also. That's why I
Wonderful,
chose.
Prabhu. So
Yeah.
there are some questions that have come privately, and we encourage relative newcomers as well to send in some questions. If you are not able to send it to that everybody can see, you can send it privately, because we encourage everybody to ask questions, and especially Dravid Prabhu is here, and all of us know him. He's a friend and well-wisher of every ISKCON Scarborough devotee and beyond. So he's there to guide us and explain the questions, answer the questions that all of us may have. So please don't hold back when you get an opportunity. Prabhu is going to be here next week as well. So we don't, I mean, devotees can ask, but we want newer devotees to ask questions. So some of the questions that has come through, Prabhu. So with regard to the first element of surrender, again, these are very basic questions, but we would like to get some answers from you. The six processes, so to execute pure devotional services. One is to follow in the footsteps of previous acharyas. Now, when we read about great personalities, even including Haridas Thakur or Dhruva Maharaj or Prithu Maharaj, when we read from Srimad Bhagavatam, we also see that they have undergone tremendous austerity and sacrifices, eating only leaves, or that type of austerity. Haridas Thakur chanting for so long, and Dhruva Maharaj as well practicing austerities when he went to the forest. So where do we draw the line? What is the scope of our following the footsteps referred to?
Yeah, that's a ever present question. There's I think it's expressed most accurately. Prabhupada gave us this phrase, following the footsteps versus imitating. We can't imitate Haridas Thakur. In fact, Prabhupada very sternly warned us against that, because the temptation might be, for some of us, all right, I'm just go alone, and go off into a cave somewhere and chant Hare Krishna 300,000 times a day, and I go back to Godhead. But Prabhupada said, no, you'll never be able to do that, and it'll be bad for your development, because this idea of over endeavor, biting off more than you could chew. I'll give you a historical account of this. There was once one devotee, I first saw him in San Diego when I came down here in 1975. Prabhupada was here, and they would do a nice elaborate Govardhan Puja festival, because this is New Govardhan, And so I came, and there were some devotees from Detroit who had arrived. And there was one devotee who had some heart problems, and he went to one doctor and told him, well, you only have so many, maybe a year to live. So he asked Prabhupada, can I take Babaji, Prabhupada? So Prabhupada agreed. He gave him Babaji. And here was this devotee, everyone was piling out of the cars, and here's this devotee with a short white, gamsha and everything, just like, wow, that's our Babaji, the only Babaji in America, in the movement. So he was there chanting. We saw him, every so often and for that little festival. And then as time went on, he eventually went to Mayapur with Prabhupada's blessings, just to hear and chant, So, but he wasn't that many years in the movement, and nobody was at that point, So he wasn't, doing what the other devotees were doing, attending the program, Bhagavatam. He was just chanting, because he could die at any moment, he thought. Then he went to a doctor in India, and they found out, well, he didn't really have a year to live. He could take some medicine, and that would help his heart problem. And so he couldn't get back in to the regular program, and he eventually left the movement. And so it's kind of a special case, but there've been others. And so like the best thing to do is when you find these great figures in the Bhagavatam, such as Dhruva, Prahlad, and the CC with Haridas Thakur more recently, but still, is to find out their instructions, just like I quoted that verse from Dhruva's prayers, you know. Now, even that, of course, you may find, well, that's, you know, but he's, you know, he's asking to associate with devotees. You have to learn to take the essence of their instructions and as much of their example as is appropriate for us. And this is why, you know, consultation with senior devotees or with your Guru Dev, your spiritual master, is so important when you want to engage in a certain line of sadhana. How much should I take? Like Kadashi, official Ekadashi, which I've done a couple of times, not every time, is near Jal and staying up all night and chanting. You know, it's a very potent program. You can imagine how wonderful it is. And when you're in the Dham and Vrindavan, it's more likely you'll be able to do that, and you know, it won't throw you for a loop. But to try to do that in the middle of you know, suppose you're working and so forth, you can see how it could be very difficult. And so Prabhupada gave us, you know, he gave us, okay, fast from grains and beans. Oh, you can do a little better. Just do a fast. It's not going to kill you, you know, a water fast, which is what I do now. I used to do Nirjal, but I'm getting a little old for that. And in this way, you in consultation, you take on that much austerity that won't disrupt your bhakti in the end. You know, you become discouraged. Oh, I couldn't do that, and like that. So that's how we can get inspiration from these great souls. You know, I personally can't pray like Queen Kunti. Bring on the more dangers. You know, I want more dangers. I'm happy when I'm be able to chant Hare Krishna in a peaceful environment. There isn't any danger. Of course, you know, I'm experiencing the great benefits of being a full-time devotee and chanting regularly, meeting with devotees. I'm able to go to the temple in Kirtan. In this COVID pandemic, there's so much distress and anxiety and fear that people are showing. But we're finding that if we can do our sadhana and we can have a little kirtan or, you know, take shelter of Krishna, it's not the same for devotees. So that's the idea. The point is, consult with senior devotees, preferably your spiritual master, about how much of the example and practices of these great devotees we can take on. And that's the safe path. That's the idea.
Wonderful, Prabhu. Very nicely answered, very practical. So we take the essence of instructions from these great devotees. And also when we look at their life, what they have done. So sometimes, even though, you know, we got the instructions from Prabhupada, you know, what we need to do. Yeah. Minimum 16 rounds, etc. But sometimes we think, oh my God, it's so difficult. At that time, I think it'll be very motivating and inspiring to see the highest level of what Haridas Thakur and others have done. So we know that what we are doing is not much in that way. So in that way, it encourages us. So thank you for answering that, Prabhu.
Sure.
And our next question is, you know, in the Upadeshamrita, in the second element, it said to not be greedy for mundane achievements. And then I'm asking this question because you know, everybody except I would say except you, Prabhu, in this today's call are grahasthas, and I mean, where everybody works, you know, they're either students or they're studying. So how do we define these mundane achievements? You know, somebody will have to, you know, nowadays the new normal is you got to, you know, keep working better and better or doing continuously improve to even stay in the job. And then resultantly there is this promotion and things like that. So which is part of that. So how do we define the mundane achievements in the Upadeshamrita versus what we are doing on a daily basis at work or as a student?
Yeah, well, there's two elements there. One is the priyasa, and the other is laulyam. Priyasas is I think over endeavoring for mundane achievements, something like that. I don't have the translation in front of me. The key is the over endeavoring part. We have to prioritize, and part of the surrender and part of the, you know, maturity in devotional service is accepting the truth that our most important thing in our lives is devotional service. That is the real, that's what makes it meaningful, makes our life meaningful. And so if, you know, we can aspire for success at our job or you know, college career, whatever it may be. but we have to be careful that doesn't impinge or make it impossible to practice sadhana bhakti. In other words, that's our life and soul. That's what makes it all work. It makes it all meaningful. And so there's a danger, obviously, of slipping back into having to spend all our time, all our energy, all our attention on the material side of what we have to do to sustain keep our body and soul together. So that's, then, I mean, everyone's got his own different situation, but the skill, the art is to adjust the material side. A perfect example is Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Now, we read so many of his expressions there. He's sincere at that. He's a pure devotee. And yet he had that material aspect of his life that where he was fulfilling his duties and very responsibly, and he had a large family and so forth. But, at the same time, he was writing so many books. And so I think the real key is don't waste time. Don't waste time. I've been asked to give the Sunday Feast lecture in a couple of weeks, and they asked for a title, and that was my title: Don't Waste Time. Because especially, when we get this world shattering example of the pandemic, and it's we're threatening is the climate change, and always. I remember growing up in the 50s and 60s. And it was more so than now, because when the Soviet Union collapsed, it gave us a false sense of security, really. But it was always like, oh, these nuclear bombs are hanging over my head. I would dream about it. Sometimes wake up in a nightmare when I was a kid. And so, but really, that's our situation. Even without all of this tension, human life is very tenuous. So the priority has to be set, and that becomes from hearing Shastra regularly and associating with the serious devotees. And then to integrate that attitude of prioritizing our bhakti into our lives in general, and seeing how we can do what's necessary, but not to get caught up in material life so much that it's impinging on our sadhana. It's a real art, and therefore, we need association with grahastas who've been able to strike that balance. And we usually can find a bunch of things we can cut out, from our downtime, and that we could dedicate to bhakti. We could be doing our rounds. We could be studying. It's a question of being vigilant and serious. That's the idea.
Good, wonderful, Prabhu. So the answer is, let's not waste time and adjust the material life and not over endeavor materially, so that
consult the senior devotees, who can give you advice on how to make this balance, which is sometimes difficult to strike balance.
And there's a couple of more questions, Prabhu. So one about the inattentiveness. The 10th offense is inattentive when chanting. So now one is consciously being inattentive, where we have a phone next to us when we are chanting, and we know that there's going to be messages or whatever it is. So we give an opportunity to be inattentive. So this 10th offense talks about that, or subconsciously, subliminally, our mind drifts away, which Krishna talks about, when it goes away, bring it back.
Yeah.
So how do we understand the 10th offense?
Well, the both of those elements are there, and we find that the wandering of the mind, from the holy name, just when we're chanting, not intentionally or not, we're trying to concentrate, but we find ourselves having difficulty. That's a result of other things that we do during the rest of the time, because the mind is carrying, forward other things that we've done, especially, Prajalpa and the other elements of those 6 or 8 in the text 3 or text 2 of the Upadeshamrita. So that's how we understand the involuntary mind wandering. Now the inattentiveness, that we do consciously, that's more serious, because it means that we're not taking the offense that seriously. We're thinking we can hedge, but we really can't, and it just prolongs the time before we really experience more and more of the taste of the holy name. This is why it's so important to read the Chaitanya Charitamrita and to really see the standard of how Lord Chaitanya is tasting and his great devotees are tasting the holy names, and you know, Srila Prabhupada chant, hear him chant, and because unless we're reminded of what the real standard is that we're aiming for, then we can go births. You know, I mean, there's no assurance that we're going to achieve pure devotion in this lifetime. It takes our effort, and so that's another silver lining of this situation we're in now, is that it should make us all more serious about throwing out, you know, kicking out, just like that verse, Utsrajaitan Abhayodapate Sampatam. He's rejecting, Madhavendra is throwing far away. In other words, you can't just move it off to the side, you know, and then so that it's within reach and you can bring it back. You want to kick it far away, throw it so you can't reach it anymore. That's right there in the Bhagavatam, you know, second verse, Dharma projita, kaita projita, look it up, you know, it means rejecting with great force all the cheating religions, you know, and we're only dealing with pure devotion here, you know, which is really what we need. So this determination, we're back to Sankalpa, which is how we began. This determination to, you know, give up the offenses, both the intentional inattentiveness, which is definitely a big blockage, and even the unintentional, those things which make it more likely for us to be inattentive, you know, that we may do at other times when we're not chanting japa. That's the other kind of attention, the source of the other attention. That is, you know, comes, that determination will come from hearing about, you know, reading about the standard Tunde Tandavadi Ting, how Lord, you know, Rupa Goswami is so tasting so much sweetness in the holy name. He wants to have millions of mouths, you know. Well, when will that day be ours? You know, when we're serious about giving up the offenses, including inattention, and you know, and also, you know, the holy name is a person. So glorification of the holy name, reading Shikshastika, reading that Namashtika, all of these things are available now. If you don't have Namashtika, I can send it to you. You know, I quoted several verses from that Namashtika by Rupa Goswami. So that glorification of the name is glorification of Krishna. Then you get more mercy for the holy name, and he gives you the strength to, you know, give up inattention and be absorbed in the holy name. Wonderful. So it's all very personal. Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhu. So we have a couple of more questions. We're just a few minutes over time, but one of the questions that came through is, I mean, we know the answer from your lifestyle, Prabhu, how you live your life, but the question is overeating, you know, applicable to Krishna Prasad as well? You know, that's one of the impediments to devotional service.
Yeah. Well, of course, you know, famously, and if you read the Chaitanya Charitamrita, you know, you keep reading about these incredible feasts, and they eat up to the neck. You know, I was just reading one of the passages. I think it was Lord Chaitanya in Puri, and all the devotees were there, and he would, you know, made sure there was plenty of prasadam, and he personally put the food on the plate. And he said Lord Chaitanya was not used to taking prasadam in small quantities, you know. So he filled all the plates up, and the devotees would. So this is, you know, the model. Lord Prabhupada came to America, and he, you know, cooked wonderfully first, and he taught the devotees how to prepare beautiful, wonderful, tasty prasadam, and it's very much integral to the process of devotional service. And he encouraged devotees to eat, you know, plenty, even more than they would ordinarily eat. But you know, there's a question of when. You know, that's applicable. It's certainly applicable for people who are just coming because it's a big attraction, and it makes you attached, you know, to devotees, to devotional life. It certainly did for me when I first started coming to the temple. But you soon discover that, okay, that's a certain phase that you go through, especially, you know, brahmacharis joining the temple. But to really advance, you have to come down to the point, you know, where you're just eating what you need, you know, and moderately. And because what it does is it's distracting, you know, and it of course, as Prabhupada explains, it also stimulates the genitals, and it's you sleep more, which is not good and it's unhealthy. So the idea is to the point of of taking prasadam, just what you need. As Prabhupada says, take what you need. There's a wonderful set of lectures Prabhupada gave called the Yoga Systems Tapes, and as many of you know, in that chapter 6, most of it is in chapter 6, a little bit in chapter 8, the Yoga System, and that there's Krishna says. I forget the Sanskrit now, but don't eat that yoga is impossible for those who eat too much or eat too little, who sleep too much or sleep too little. In other words, moderate, do everything moderately, and then it becomes then it doesn't have the bad effects. So try to control that. Glorify prasadam, serve out prasadam, and just make a determination. One of the things that I discovered in my life is that I really started to be able to control that for years. When I joined brahmachari, I was eating too much, and I would do a lot of chanting and dancing, burn it off, But when I really got into the verses, the shlokas, it became, that's where it was such a taste in that, which I can help you, anyone who wants to learn, just let me know. I have a Dravida's 6 easy steps for learning verses and so forth. But there's a tremendous sweetness there in, like madodam, madodam, vadodasya vibo, madodam, madodam, vadanam, madodam, madogandi, madu smitame, the whole madodam, 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 madodam. Sweet, sweet is my dear Lord's form, sweet is still his face so fair, but his honey-scented gentle smile is sweet beyond compare. So you can get unlimited sweetness from the Shastra and from serving Krishna, and then it becomes much easier to control the tongue. It's not easy, but it definitely gives you great dividends in devotional service.
Thank you, Prabhu. So again, moderation is the key word there.
Moderation, moderation.
Especially nowadays, we don't burn it off, whatever we eat, especially during this COVID times. And,
yes.
And as you rightly said, Prabhu, like it's got side effects, of sleeping more and being unhealthy as well. So thank you for that, Prabhu. Maybe we'll take a couple of more questions. One is with regard to this, the third element that you covered today, where Lord Krishna will give all protection. And it's again a practical question. All of us go through at some point or another. I'm not sure whether it will take a longer answer, but if you have a shorter answer, it all depends on our faith. So when things don't go our way, or in our timeline, we seem to be discouraged and have, we lose some faith in that as human beings. So in times like that, how can we make sure that we still have this, we totally understand and internalize this third element that Lord Krishna will give all protection in the sense we may have ups and downs in our life, jobs and family, etc. But when we say Lord Krishna will give all protection, is that material protection, spiritual protection, and how can we have that faith during times that where we go through troubles?
Yeah, well, as I explained when we were discussing that element, we know from the history of this movement and from the history of India, there were times when devotees were persecuted, and certainly the Pandavas went through so much danger and trials and tribulations, and so did Prahlad. They're great examples. But we can also take, a more current. I mean, Srila Prabhupada, as I mentioned, went through so much, and the idea is that feeling Krishna's protection is that he will always protect. Obviously, is the third element of the Sharanagati, and one of the things that is so important is that it destroys the fear. Really, the element of danger that's so damaging for our consciousness is the fear and the terror that comes when there's some danger to our lives or loved ones and so forth like that. And so if one can be, the equipoise. I mean, we see that right in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Mata Sparshachakonte, one has to tolerate, these things. And if you do, then you're eligible for liberation. In other words, even though things may happen that are very unpleasant, that are dangerous, threatening, we have to become strong enough spiritually to have that center. Like we just had this incredible experience now. There was one lady who grew up here in the movement. I remember her as a little 4-year-old when I came in the late 80s, 4 or 5 years old. And she was a devotee child, grew up in a devotional family, and a very sweet girl. She got a master's in English. She became a teacher. She taught at the Alachua school for a while. She got married to one of our recruits here. They settled in Alachua. And then she just came down with this cancer, inoperable cancer, 7 months ago. And she left her body a couple of weeks ago. And but she was preaching. Her parents went out there. Her husband, of course, was on the scene. And but she had friends all over the movement, and she was teaching everybody. She was calm, and she was talking to her Gurudev, which Indra Dumnaraj was calling her. Spend an hour at a time. He was in Vrindavan now. There's no Polish tour, and she, when she left, she was completely calm, and Krishna conscious. It was inspiring for the whole yatra, even though it happened in Florida, but we knew about it. We're going to have a memorial later today for her. And so here was a situation where the worst danger, came upon her, and yet she, relying on her devotee association and what she knew in Krishna consciousness, she became a very mature devotee in a very quick time. He seems to have gone back to Godhead the way she passed away. So the idea is that we have to be prepared for things and that are going to happen in our lives, and be as Krishna conscious as possible, and really embrace the philosophy: we're not this body, life is temporary, we don't know. And this is how Krishna protects. The body's going to fall one way or another, but the protection is there for our consciousness if we want it, if we really accept Krishna's plan for us. This famous verse, I'm sure you know this one, Ananda, Tate nukampam susamikshamana bunjana eva nukatam vipakam vidvagapube vidadan namaste jiveti yo mukti pade sadaya bhak. This is the whole pastime around this verse in the Chaitanya Charitamrita with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And this verse, it says, well, whatever happens to me, I'm not going to blame anyone else. I'm not blaming fate. I'm certainly not blaming Krishna. It's something that that I did in my own life. There's no one else to blame for it. And so I'm going to continue to worship Krishna, not just superficially, but from the heart, from the mind, the body. Serving and accepting this as, Krishna is minimizing the difficulty for me. And so I'm going to continue to worship him with full consciousness and heart. And this is assures your passage back to Godhead. Having this attitude when difficulties arrive in this world, it's it's fairly easy to be a devotee when in the middle of a festival, and that's all fine and good. Everything is going fine, we're very jubilant. But when difficulties arise, then it's a test for us. Do we still stay faithful to Krishna? Do we understand that this is Krishna managing my so-called karma, for my benefit? And so then one can really rise above the urgency and the danger and the fear that the danger will come. And this is how we have to see it. That's the best I can do with that.
Beautiful, Prabhu. Thank you so much, Prabhu. So I think there's one more question. Maybe you can touch on that next week. It's about, how to control lust, and who can we ask other than you, Prabhu, who's been a brahmachari all your life. So we can take that up next week as you're concluding this two-part seminar.
Okay.
On behalf of all the devotees who joined us, I would like to sincerely thank you for a fascinating class today, Prabhu. So for the devotees who joined us today, please join us next week, same time through the same Zoom link for the concluding part of the 6 limbs of surrender session with His Grace Dravida Das Prabhu. And also on another topic, today is the second day of the 3-part series, Srila Prabhupada, our founder Acharya by His Grace Sureshwar Das Prabhu. Yesterday was day 1, and devotees from Trinidad, USA, and various parts of Canada like Edmonton, Vancouver, Toronto, Winnipeg, etc. joined. So you can join through Zoom or through Zoom, but it's a different link. So you can log on to Toronto website or to ISKCON Scarborough's website to get that Zoom link, as well as you can join through ISKCON Toronto's Facebook page as well. So it starts at 1 o'clock, which is in about 45 minutes. So we'll see you there. And again, thank you so much, Prabhu. We will we're eager to hear from you next week, same time. Hare Krishna.
Okay. Haribol. Haribol.
Hare Krishna.